onto like why we're actually here. So, I seen at the start of the week, Louis Theroux was back with a bunch of documentaries. Louis Theroux, someone that I followed for a long period of time, pretty much watched everything that he's done. And we were having a conversation. We were just saying, we're up to anything at the weekend. Thought we could maybe get one of these in. And I just suggested that we could talk about reacting to this without sounding too much like a TikToker or a YouTuber or something like that. So I seen this on Monday. So just to give it a bit of context, if you want to go and watch it yourself, it's on BBC iPlayer and that. It's called Louis Theroux's Forbidden America, and this
Online and Extreme.
Yeah, Online and Extreme was this particular episode, and it surrounds the far right movement called America First in America, obviously, and it kind of centers around a few people, but the main one that it centers around is a young guy called Nick J. Fuentes, I think his name is.
Yeah, that's kind of well. That was kind of the first thing that threw at me when they introduced him. Like, that's not an American name.
No,
And then when you go on to watch the program, you think, well, this guy's like, well, to put it into context, he's the most far right American nationalist that you could get. But it's not even like to do with just race.
No, it's to do with like he doesn't think that women should be able to vote. Like he says that Louis Theroux asks him, do you think women should have the right to vote, right? And he kind of like, no, but that's not going away anytime soon. So he makes his views pretty clear.
Yeah.
And the kind of whole theme of the documentary is these people are trying to mask a pretty deep hatred through irony, trying to make it sound like, oh, this is just edgy humor. This is just humor. We don't actually hate anyone, but we do believe in white racial superiority and that. They just drop that in there like mid sentence. So it starts off with Louis and that going to a conference.
Yeah, that was kind of an eye opener for me.
Yeah,
that was wild.
Especially the chanting, right?
Yeah, because like I know that America's got to the point it's at just now. I didn't. This is the first time I've kind of really see. You only see what's put on the news, don't you?
Yeah.
And you only see what you look for.
Mm-hmm.
But Louis Theroux's the kind of guy who'll go a bit deeper with these things, and it's not like he's attending these things to support these things.
No,
but
he's curious about them, though, right?
Yeah, and he's got definitely a different approach to the majority of journalists, which I feel gets him deeper into these kind of places.
I don't think he goes into it with an emotional kind of connection to anything in the sense of he definitely has his own views. Like he says in the documentary that he pretty much firmly is against everything that they stand for and that, but I don't think he lets, I don't want to say emotions get the better of him in the sense of, is a lot of people are going to be offended by that extreme thought process that those people carry, but he doesn't let it kind of stop him from like being this inquisitor and trying to not understand, but try and get to the bottom of why these people get to this kind of way of thinking.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to be kind of controversial when I say this, but one of the things that stood out to me was how they are recruiting the young generation into this type of political movement.
Are you on about like with online gaming?
Online gaming and do you know what? I'm just going to come out and say it. It is basically, to me, like grooming.
Yeah.
Not grooming in the sense of what that word is usually associated with
It's grooming of the mind.
Yeah.
Grooming is not just like terms of pedophilia or whatever like that. You can be groomed in many sorts of ways, and you don't just have to be a child to be groomed.
Mm-hmm.
Just get that out there just now. But it's like these people are getting into young adults' heads at a time when young adults' brains are changing from a kid to an adult, which if you set these beliefs in people early, as you can see, this guy's 20. Well, he's 23. Now, at 23 years old, Louis Theroux kind of touched in the documentary, to get in positions of power and to be speaking to the audience he's speaking to 30 years ago wouldn't have been possible. No. You need a full education. You need, probably a lot of money behind you to get into that stage. But this is just a kid on the internet.
Yeah.
That's a scary thing, and he's gathered his following. And it's not just like, it's a couple hundred people following. There's hundreds of thousands of people who agree with this kid.
Because he does his own live show on his own website, because he's obviously banned from most social media platforms.
Yeah.
But I think apparently, I mean, it could be total bullshit, but apparently he's being watched by 10,000 people a night, which, you know, is not a number to be shunned at in the sense, you know what I mean? Like, and there is like this certain, you can tell what he is.
Well, put it like this, right? 10,000 people a night, you're saying that, right? You imagine 10,000 people watch this podcast a night, right? Or per episode or something.
Hopefully.
Fingers crossed, like, yeah.
Come on, Neil Young, let's go.
3,000 of them people are going to go and Google what we're speaking about today.
Yeah.
30 people are going to agree with him.
Yeah. And that's what the term influencer comes from, right?
Yeah.
Because I
hate that term.
So do I. It feels so. I see Jake Paul when I hear that term, and I hate that cunt. So like that's what I just. But I suppose I understand it in the sense of, because we're like, there's a distortion between reality and the virtual world, right? So even though we're having this conversation right now, people that might be watching this in a couple of weeks' time when it releases are going to be watching it through a phone screen, a laptop, and it's kind of, it's not really like you're there in the moment. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's always, I mean, obviously there's difference with influencers, like when like Jake Paul's tasering rats for 5 million quid and then, you know, beating up on old MMA fighters and stuff. There's a bit where it's a bit kind of, what's the word for it? Fantasy, I suppose you would call it, in the sense of that's just not real. Like, just because he's doing that, he's got a ton of money to do shit like that and get away with it and get, you know, go from here to here in like a kind of box.
Money from that.
Yeah, from here to here in a boxing sense, and beat up people that don't even box.
Yeah.
And get made out that he's like a legit boxer. Do you know what I mean? So like that's not going to work for the vast majority of people that are in those situations. But how this comes across is that this guy, I mean, it's pretty clear what his views are and intentions are, because it seems like he puts up like a bit of a kind of defense wall to make it seem like, you know, I just care about my country. I'm not against anyone else in that. But then he slips in that he thinks that 70 to 80% of America should be white Protestant, which is very, very hard wing leaning view. You know, basically a Nazi view at the end of the day. And then he kind of tries to find this medium of where he's open about it, but at the same time not going too far, where he'll be like, oh, I'm against this, these people are too extreme, whereas in reality he is most likely on that wavelength of thinking as well. But he realizes to actually get people to be interested in coming into this kind of way of thinking, you can't immediately go in with, oh, this is what we believe in, that, because most people are going to be like, okay, no, that is wrong. Whereas this kind of conditioning and relationship building he makes, there we go, with the young people that he's talking to, because this guy is playing online games with the people that are coming to this conference. So he's selling, because I don't want to give this guy any credit, right, because you can tell that he's a very narcissistic kind of person, or has, you know, he's a narcissist basically, but you can tell he's very calculated in the moves he makes to make his movement better, or bigger rather, not better.
He everything you can tell he says is definitely rehearsed. There's nothing that's straight off the top of his head. Because speaking the stage he's on, he could very easily influence people, but he could also very easily lose people.
Yeah.
I think the gain in popularity for him is because his view is, if you're not white and not like far right like him, it's wrong.
Yeah.
And they're a minority. So
he can make it seem like they're under siege, right?
You might be like, I'm not speaking personally because I would never have views like this, but you might be all right with gay people, but you don't like black people. You fall into this category, this party. You might like black people, you don't like gay people. You're still going to have similar views. You might be for gun violence, a race war. You might have a problem against women. This party is all associated with that. So it's not like you have to follow every belief system of theirs.
There has to be
it's like a targeted audience. And a targeted audience within masses of audiences, and that's the scary thing. You know, you only have to have a slight prejudice on something, they can probably pick up on that.
Yeah, and they can manipulate that into molding you into their way of thinking from
yeah,
there.
and especially if we're on about online and gamers, like what's the average age of kids about there? It's like 13, 14 years old, you know. When kids put on a headset, they can't see the other person on the other end of the screen, you know. If you're in a lobby, like I don't do much online gaming, like the odd game of FIFA and things, but like I've seen my oldest son play in an online, there's like 100 kids in there at one point, you know. 2 of them could be spouting hate speech.
Yeah.
You know, and then next thing you know, 2 weeks down the line, that 2's turned into 4. You know,
and these ages are of ages that are, you know, they're going through puberty. They're very, you know, they're transitioning from, you know, childhood to adulthood. Right? There's this kind of period of 4 years of, you know, from 12 all the way up to 18, probably, where you've got like this middle ground, and that's you have an influential period of your life between the ages of 3 and 7, and then I think there's another one that comes along when you get into your teens and you kind of start changing as a person, and I think that's something that can be very easily manipulated, given the right environment, which I think digital in general, right, because we are becoming a more digital society, whether we like it or not.
The world wouldn't cope without the internet.
Yeah.
You know,
it is very
when
self-reliant.
Tim Berners-Lee invented the internet, I don't think he would quite realise the monster that he's created.
Yeah.
You know, because it's an absolute monster. People have this platform now where they can put themselves across, and all it takes is like a click of a button, you know, that's uploaded to the internet to see. Look at, like, it's a thing that always amazes me. Well, let's just go away from like people speaking away on the internet, right? Look at silly little videos on the internet that take mass popularity, right? Things that people like. Do you remember the kid? I always forget his name. Charlie bit my finger.
Oh yeah,
that was like one of the first.
Yeah, that was like one of the first internet phenomena. Yeah.
It's a kid biting a finger, man.
Yeah,
you know. So it just shows how like something small can take mass effect if people start sharing this, and you know that would never have got the popularity now. The way YouTube is, there's so many thousands of hours uploaded to YouTube every day and things. That video would never be popular now.
No.
So it just takes one of these hate speech videos to get popular, start getting shared in America. Obviously, you've got a Trump generation in America now, which these guys are part of.
Because they see themselves as like his followers, his fans and that.
Yeah.
And one thing that I always think about this is I think that the two... So I would put Trump in his kind of own bracket, and I put these guys in their own bracket in the sense of I think they use each other. I think...
Yeah.
Trump probably doesn't necessarily have all those views that they do, but because they support him, he can use them because Trump's only doing stuff for himself, right? He's a business tycoon. He's only going to make decisions that benefit him and his organizations.
Absolutely.
So he's going to. What I'm trying to say is, I'm not trying to say that like Donald Trump's a good president or anything, not at all. But what I'm saying is, this could have been any kind of extreme group. It wouldn't have to be the far right. It could be the far left. If they had supported him, he would have been taking them along and using them and what's the word? Facilitating them in a way, you know? Like we've seen it at the debate with him and Biden when they were talking about, was it the Proud Boys? They're another far right organization, and stand down and stand by. Like people are just like, oh, he just misspoke. It's like he didn't know, did he? He knew what he was doing with that statement. And the Capitol building where he's telling like all these crazy.
What was the statement he came out with? It was when he was in president. You start looting, we start shooting.
Yeah, that was when there was all the commotion. Well, not the commotion, but there was all that kind of chaos as a result of what had happened with the George Floyd murder, basically, and
a lot of these right wing groups took that quite literally.
Yeah,
and seen it as because they shared the same maybe beliefs as Trump, they took this quite literally.
As a blessing to do it, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
And you've seen that in do you remember Charlottesville, 2017? Yes. And this obviously appears in the documentary as well, because a lot of the people that Louis speaks to were actually there. Yeah. So I believe it was to do with a statue that whole chaos arisen from, and then there was two kind of extremes in the sense. There was this really far left, I guess you would call them Antifa, and then there was the really far right neo-Nazi group that just had this massive riot between themselves for numerous amount of days. But someone got killed.
Yeah.
I remember it was a woman, and it was a 20-year-old. I think they described him as a Hitler obsessed 20-year-old. So someone that believed in Nazism and the Nazi way of thinking. And like I remember because Trump was president at the time of this, and he was talking about it. He was like, you had some bad people and some really other bad people. So he didn't really condemn the kind of because at the end of the day, when there's people shouting like, you will not replace us and that, and they're all ethnicity is white and that, you can clearly know what that is intended to mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, even like at the Capitol building and stuff like that, when he's talking about they're in there, they're stealing, like he knows what he's doing there. Do you know what I mean? Like, go get them, go take your freedom. Like, that's, I guess the term is gaslighting nowadays to get people to do
exactly
that.
What it is. Yeah, it's influencing people to do things without actually personally taking responsibility yourself. Trump's like, he's a controversial one because I think that looking at Trump as a whole, you say like he's a businessman and that.
Yeah.
I feel like you only ever take that position to influence yourself and your own personal interests. But because Trump was the man he was before, all he's done really is push his views onto the world stage a little bit. Like, he's brought these guys that I'm not even going to say under George Bush, because I feel when it started, I feel like since 2001 and what happened back then, you've obviously had this growing anti-Semitic, anti-Muslim, anti-black feeling in America, which Obama getting in as first black president was a great thing, but it only fueled it even more.
Yeah.
Because you've got America's such a divide.
Yeah, because one of the things that like Trump was doing, especially the first time I kind of heard of him in a political sense, I guess, if you will, was he was hard on the bandwagon of like trying to get, was it Obama trying to show his birth certificate or something like that? Like he was hard on that train, like, and that was like fucking nuts. And like you were saying, that was stoking this more division, and because obviously you've got stuff like QAnon and stuff like that now, which is basically fucking mental illness in the sense of there's all these, Trump's basically brought the pandemic in to arrest people that are against, that's what these people think, and they think that everyone's against Trump because that's what he puts across, right? He's like, nothing's my fault, I never said this, I didn't say that bleach could help cure COVID and all this kind of stuff. That's what he comes across as. He can't take responsibility for anything, and he's never had to, right? Because he's always been a millionaire and a business tycoon. Like, most of the time, if you're in that position, you're not going to have to be humbled in any way. You're going to get your own way. But I think these groups probably use him as much as he uses them, in the sense of, I think they need someone to kind of be like, this is the person that we're inspired by. Yeah. And I would even say, like, people like, he says it in the documentary, Nick Fuentes, right? He has ambitions to be president, Yeah. Which obviously, I was going to rule it out there, but let's not fucking rule anything out, because fucking...
Well, do you know what? If someone like Trump can be president,
who else can do it? You know what I mean?
They're on about The Rock running for president. That's not out of the question in America. No, it's not. And that's the crazy thing. Here's a guy who's, it's not taking anything away from The Rock. He's a great actor.
Yeah, The Rock's a savage, and he's done really well for himself, but he has no political history.
President, man.
Yeah. Like, you have to have...
Arnie got into governor of California.
Yeah, because he said, I'll be back. And that's basically how he got into government.
But is that the way? Is that how far extreme American politics has got these days? All you need is a podium.
It's a reality TV show,
pretty much.
Like, I this is actually crazy. I reckon if someone like Jake Paul ran for it, he would have a good chance of winning. Yeah. Do you know how mad that would be? Because this is only going to become more common.
If you're watching this, Jake Paul, please fucking don't, like...
Or do, I don't know, let's get some chaos on the go. But,
you heard it here first. We want some acknowledgement for this.
Just makes me his running mate or
place in the White Office.
Yeah, the year's 2030 and President Paul lifts lockdown rules. But this is just going to become more and more common as we're moving into this age of where more people are just into this digital space, and these are the only people that exist. Like, if an actor like passes away today, I remember I'm not trying to say it's not a big deal, but I'm just saying it used to be a much bigger deal in the grand, like everyone would be like, oh my god, I can't believe they're gone in that.
Who was the last big person you remember? Like
David Bowie,
yeah, like Whitney Houston or something like that. Yeah, and you think back to like Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
I found out the day after Michael Jackson died.
Yeah,
and everyone was telling me Michael Jackson died. I'm like,
no.
I went down and checked the news, and I was like, oh my god, he's actually
dead.
that.
Yeah, I guess this really was it. But
no, I know what you're saying. Like, it's not a massive deal because of the platform people have these days, and everyone's on the internet.
It's in every form of what the old world was, right? Like, if we used to watch boxing, we would watch Ricky Hatton versus Floyd Mayweather, and that would be a massive event.
It cost you like £17 on Sky Box Office,
and it was like, but it was worth it, right? Because it was people that were genuinely matched up with each other. Whereas nowadays, people are paying that money to see Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul. Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Like the payday for like get sidetracked here a little bit, but the payday for doing something so mediocre these days is crazy. Yeah. And it's all down to the following, the influence, and the platform these people have.
And then they can go into anything. Because there's no doubt about it, like, these people that are quote-unquote influencers have, some talent in terms of gaining followers and gaining an audience and gaining something that interests people. No doubt about it. I'm not trying to just be bitter or that, but in the sense of then they use that and take it into everything else. And it's like, we're talking about the business tycoon thing again. They're just like, because they could have that, they could do anything, and they're going to get like tens of millions of people watching them. But instead of that, they're going into combat sports where there is people literally working 2 fucking jobs on top of fucking training to fucking get to the premier promotions of where they want to go to make money. Where you could be taking a shit on a toilet and people are going to fucking watch you the same amount as what they would do you fighting Floyd Mayweather. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And like, Jake Paul said a lot of this stuff about UFC.
How did Jake Paul get big in the first place? Was that online gaming?
He was
Vine, wasn't it?
Yeah, him and his brother were on Vine, and then he was doing a lot of controversial shit. Like, he was like riding motorbikes over swimming pools and setting shit on fire at his house, and all the neighbors were complaining. And I think he was on Disney. I think Disney Incorporated, because obviously these guys have like a really young demographic in terms of viewership, and then all that controversy kicked off. Disney booted him off, and then I think him and his brother were kind of manufacturing beefs to get people interested in terms of, oh look, they've dropped another diss track on each other. Do you know what I mean? It's in the rap game as well and everything. Do you know what I mean? It's everywhere. And then the whole thing with his brother happened with the forest.
Yeah.
And then I think everyone was like, right, fuck these guys. And then the whole boxing thing came about, and he stuck with it. And let's be honest, I'm not being a fucking hater. In terms of the opponents that he's faced recently, let's not count the basketball player and the other YouTube guy, but in terms of people that are somewhat athletes in some, considering he's only been doing boxing for what, like 2-3 years, he's done okay. Yeah. But I don't like him coming out and saying that he's fighting Canelo. That's not happening. Or please just let it happen, because it would be an absolute murder.
I would pay to see that. I wouldn't pay to see him fight past it Woodley.
Yeah.
I want to pay to see, but you're also paying thinking, right, this is the one he's going to get smashed.
Yeah, I know. It's that Floyd Mayweather stuff, I paid every Floyd Mayweather fight thinking he is getting beat tonight, and he's probably made like so much money off of me alone.
Yeah.
And I can only give him credit because that's evil genius, but we'll get back to what we kind of branched off into YouTubers and that. But
it's the influence altogether.
These guys have got this influence, right? In the sense of, he speaks to, obviously Nick Fuentes has his own show.
What are his followers called again? They've got a name. They're like Gorkers or something like that. But they are essentially the YouTube, I've got to say it, Fortnite generation.
Yeah. Because they'll pay to leave comments, they'll, what do they call it, super chats, is that what they call these things, where they pay to leave a thing that the people that are on the stream can see and all that kind of stuff.
And if you're going, like, Twitch, like, I just recently got into watching Twitches. I watched guys playing Football Manager and things like that. It's just, yeah, it's not interesting.
No.
But you get links to all these Fortnite streams. There's 30,000, 40,000 people watching this, you know? And if this guy goes on and just plays games and then speaks about hating black people, hating this, hating that, like, all these kids are like, oh, right, yeah.
Yeah. He's cool because he plays Fortnite, so let's follow anything that he says.
And then they're going out and speaking to their friends, and their friends are like, oh, what's this?
Yeah.
All right, they're going on to it as well. Next thing you know, you've got groups of hundreds of teenage kids hating on black people just because they've heard someone on the internet saying it with no real foundation for it.
Yeah.
If you have a genuine prejudice against an ethnic group, women, something like that, then that is your own problem to deal with, right? If you have a genuine reason for that, then that's still your own problem to deal with. But, like, these kids are not, there's no reason behind it, you know? There's no, like, when I was watching the documentary, as you're saying, he kind of tries to laugh it off almost. Yeah. He's like, but like,
this isn't serious.
I'm not like totally down to earth, but, and then Louis will kind of pick his brain a little bit more, and he almost falls back into it again. To the hate speech again. It was the guy that they interviewed, one of his followers. The Nazi salute guy.
Yeah, Beardsley or whatever it's called. The internet troll that let's just say could dish it out but couldn't take it, because this got proper heated real quick.
He threw Louis out his garden, man.
And I think the reason that he got so angry so quickly is he knew that he was backed into a corner. He knew that, because he even says, I know it looks bad, and it's like, well, you're basically saying that you did it then. Because I'm not trying to defend this guy in any way. In the video that Lou's referring to, I suppose people could be, oh, that is a mistake, because it's not the most obvious one, but then there is a second photo where he's clearly doing a Nazi salute.
Yeah.
And then that, you look back at the other one and you're like, okay, no, that's one as well. And then he was like, I'm just doing a salute in that. And it goes from 0 to 100 real quick. And it seems to be a common theme with people that are in these groups, is that they have a really deep-rooted anger. Yeah. And I think we were saying earlier, it doesn't necessarily have to be in line with what that political movement they are in. It doesn't have to be concentrated at that. It could be anything, because it targets what do they call the people? Incels. Like, if you think about the guy in Plymouth last year, he went and shot 5 people in this rage. But he had a YouTube channel, and they were looking through that, and he was having these rants about how he was going to the gym all the time, and women still didn't like him. They were constantly rejecting him, and you could clearly tell he then took a hatred of women as a whole, because he didn't deal with rejection well. Do you know what I mean? And he was quite reclusive in his nature, in the sense of he was, doing these YouTube things and playing online games and that, and had a gun license and that. So you can see how these people end up in this unhealthy way of thinking shit, especially if there's anger that manifests itself in a really bad way instead of actually dealing with it properly, but like we're saying, that this type of anger gets manipulated into, then it reminds me of, the film American History X, where you can tell that the two brothers have anger from something that's happened in their life, and then there's the guy, what's his name? I think his name's Cameron or something. The guy that's the head of the neo-Nazis in American History X has manipulated that, and that like him being able to say to them, well, it's these different races, it's these that are affecting the country. This is why you're angry, and this kind of wool over the eyes type shit. Because this way of thinking is bullshit. Do you know what I mean?
It's total crap.
Yeah.
It's not a rational way of thinking.
And it's not logical. There's nothing that can justify this way of thinking other than you've got deep-rooted hatred inside you, and you've just manifested it into this cause because they'll take you in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the thing is, look at the guy's background. I done a little bit of Wikipedia on him before I came. He is from Italian and Hispanic descent. But yeah, he's spouting white nationalists, America first.
Yeah, propaganda.
Yeah, like, how confused is that guy?
Yeah.
He's also going by his Wikipedia page, he's I can't even say the word. It's either nativist or a navitist. So you're basically against people of that actual culture from, so he'd be American Indians, or I don't even know what's the correct term for American Indians.
Native Americans.
Native Americans. Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to offend anyone. Like, but he's that. Like, if it's America first, then that's your first Americans.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. It's weird how they twist things as well. Like, they twist reality in the sense of America was founded by like us and that as well. It wasn't. Like,
did you do any kind of looking into America first themselves?
A little bit. I it kind of gets meshed in. What I've noticed is it's changed over the years in the sense of, like I've said, probably through this guy's vision, if you would call it that. They want to make it more PR friendly to encourage people to come and then put the full on, you know, neo-Nazi right-wing shit on them. Do you know what I mean? Whereas stuff like the Proud Boys and other kind of far-right organisations, there's more out there in your face straight away.
This is going to sound like such a like backwards view, but it took something like this, watching that documentary, for me to realise how people can be radicalised through the internet.
Yeah.
When I heard about this years ago with like Muslims being radicalised through the internet, I couldn't really get my head around how you can sit and watch an internet video and be like, all right, this is the way I think now. So it's taken someone of my own race to kind of put that forward, and that's not nothing to do deep rooted to me. I'm not racist in the slightest, but it's like, it's weird when it's put into your own shoes that you actually see it this way. I never seen it that way with like all these young guys that are going off to Afghanistan to these camps and things. I honestly saw it and thought, like, you know, how can you how can that come about through internet videos or going and reading certain prayer books or things like that? I totally see it now. Totally see it. Like,
the manipulation from extremist groups, regardless of who they are, what political side they are, is real, and it's very powerful, and it will draw a lot of people in, and that's how these causes grow. Like, I believe they say that the far right in America is now the greatest domestic terrorist threat in the West.
That's got
which is absolutely crazy in the sense of more stuff like the Capitol could potentially happen. Like, the Capitol was bananas enough. Like, Lockdown 2 Electric Boogaloo was in full force. No one was able to go anywhere. You know, it was just past New Year. And then this shit happens where it's like, wait a minute, they've literally ran up on the American Parliament building. First of all, you've got to ask, where's the American security at that point? Like, it's one of the biggest military infrastructures in the world. I think there'd be a bit more presence there anyway. But like, there was people pepper spraying police officers and guy with the horns, and there were, you know, and one of the.
How did the guy with the horns get in there?
I had no idea. Like,
and he's well famous now. Like, he's all over the place.
Because I think he was living in his mum's basement. Like, there's like videos of him like denying like COVID-19, like, the second wave can stand the sun, and it's like, okay, like, that's enough of that. You know what I mean? Like,
these guys are also Holocaust deniers.
Yeah.
Like, let's just touch on that for a second. Like, that's like taken away from what's going on today. Like, I've never understood a Holocaust denier. Can't get my head around it. Like, what's that all about?
Like,
is that just such an anti-Semitic view that's the way?
I think so. Yeah. Because a lot of the people that start off with that kind of view then turn it to being a good thing rather than it not happening.
It's weird because, like, you've got these guys in Britain. They're called, I can't remember. They always stand at the end of the independence rallies in Scotland.
Okay.
And they're waving the little British flags. And there's a guy called Alistair or something. I don't want to give the guy any sort of platform.
Would this be because
he's always called Monkey Jacket.
Is there not like a Britain first as well? Because
it's something like this.
Because I seen there was a video when we had the elections in Scotland back in May, and that
he's always wearing sunglasses and he's got like a leather British jacket.
Yeah, and there's that lady with the red hair, and she was arguing with
100%. This. So these guys are essentially your British version
of America First.
But they're another one that's a Holocaust denier. So I don't understand where you could anti-Semitism goes back thousands of years. But like, I don't understand how it still has a place today.
Yeah.
Anti-Semitism, you don't really see it until you look fully into neo-Nazism, things like that, you'll see a lot of more anti-Muslim, even anti-Catholic, anti-Protestant.
Well, sectarianism, especially
sectarianism, that's the word I'm
in
looking
these
for.
isles, is still fucking rife today as it ever
Absolutely.
is. You know what I mean? There's discrimination still pretty much all over the world in different forms and whatnot.
Yep.
But, you know, these groups, I don't understand how anyone... I mean, they try and mask it in the sense of it not being what it is, but it's fucking a Nazi ideology, isn't it? It's basically white Protestancy is superior to anything on earth. That's what they promote, essentially. And they can fucking hide behind all these PR campaigns if it's not that and that, but they reveal themselves. They can't not reveal it. You know, like we were saying, when Nick Fuentes is getting all excited, and that's when he's talking about this really sick ideology about being the we've got to reinstate like this kind of power that we had, you know, and women can't vote and all this really medieval shit.
Yeah. I looked into America first, so they are based on a 1790 philosophy.
Right. Is this to do with like the American Civil War and stuff like that?
This is to do with George Washington.
Right,
so
okay.
They're going right the way back, and forgive me for a second. I need to get this up on my phone because I don't want to misquote this. Sorry, they're called Groypers.
Groypers, okay.
His followers. America first. So they see themselves. There we go. You can just edit this bit out, dude.
Yeah. Silence.
So that's what it is. American nationalism. So it traces its roots back to 1790. And it's a speech made by George Washington that basically says when the rules of America, the founding fathers and all this were being made, that white man shall have power over all. And this is an idea that they've taken quite literally over the past 100 years, because the American Constitution hasn't changed.
No.
It's never changed in 200 odd years. So you've got things that were, I'm not going to say right, but seen as right back then.
Yeah.
That people are still living their life by. These days, you get many people who will get away massively in court in America with these 100-year-old laws. The right to defend myself. The right to bear arms is the Fifth Amendment in America. That's like the fifth most important rule in America. So that should tell you exactly where that country lies.
Nice, yeah.
The fact that you've also got these guys who are going to live their life by these rules shows that they're not going to change. They're not going
to adapt to when the world changes, right?
No.
And it's a lot of, I don't want to brand all of people with conservative views with that, but it's mainly conservative thinking people that go back to the Constitution. It's like, this cannot be changed, this can never be edited, you know, because you know, the world changes. Do you know what I mean? Like, so of course, things that people did back in 1660 are not going to be the appropriate things to do in, you know, whether they were even the appropriate things to do then. But they shouldn't, now that we've kind of moved on and learned from previous mistakes, fucking imply that in 2022 because we're just like, we can't change because we, you know, humans have got a very kind of routine mindset. Like, we don't like change a lot of the time. But like you were saying, like, these are deep rooted. Like, this is what there's like this. The biggest kind of debate in America, especially with the Constitution and the amendments, and that is the whole. I don't know if it's the right to bear arms or the Second Amendment. What's the right to hold a firearm? Or something?
Yeah, it's a lot of it is basically
because in America you can buy a full on military grade assault rifle.
Not only can you buy that, you can buy that in Asda, mate.
Yeah. And these are things that are
like,
they're not used for hunting, they're not used for any other purpose. They're designed to kill human beings. You know?
And that is like, I wouldn't say the majority of Americans have firearms, but if you go to certain cities in America, yeah, the majority of guys have, and especially in the South, like, that goes back to the Civil War, that divide. you will find literally different political views, and if you were to draw a blue line and a red line on the political views of every single person in America, I'm pretty sure it would be red at the bottom and blue at the top.
Mm-hmm.
You know, look at other countries. I can only use my own country.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say Scotland. I'm going to use the UK as a whole. I'm only use that as an example because I don't know much political history of other countries. But we've changed so much over the last 200 to 300 years
Mm-hmm.
to the stage we're at. Like, conservatives used to be the good guys.
Yeah.
They used to be the good guys. You know, it's a bit the same in America. The Republicans used to be the good guys. I'm not saying the Democrats are the good guys now, but they're certainly seen in a much more favourable and left-wing light than Republicans
when it was
are.
the complete opposite when it kind of first was formed.
Yeah. That hasn't changed in 300 years.
Yeah.
You know, Scotland's changed in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Britain's changed as a whole over the last 80.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd probably say the majority of countries, France, Germany, certainly.
Yeah, well.
Russia.
Yeah,
massively.
Yeah, especially
we'll try not to touch on that too much.
There might be a bit too much change coming that way at the moment.
Yeah. But America hasn't changed.
Mm.
You know, you've still got this massive political divide that is based by state and based by your area you're from. And
America's always had that mentality of superiority, though, right? It's always America's the greatest country in the world. People come here for great opportunities and that. And
have you ever been to America?
No, I've not.
Been to America.
What part?
Florida.
Okay,
so it was a touristy,
civil kind of place. Yeah,
touristy kind of place. Yeah, everything's big in America. Huge. Like
the American dream.
The American dream. And it's well and truly alive in these touristy kind of places. California, Florida, New York.
Mm-hmm.
Go to deep South America. It's not what they show you on the TV, you know. It's very deep-rooted racism, very deep-rooted hatred.
Because that's how the American Civil War kind of played out. It was more of a north-south divide, wasn't it, in terms of Lincoln, and then the South was more Confederate and...
Yeah, General Lee and stuff like that, you know, and slavery had a massive thing to do with that. You know, they had completely opposite views, but everyone thinks that George Washington was the biggest user of slaves out of anyone, you know, and that country was built on slavery, and it wouldn't be at the place it's at just now because of unless that happened. Like, that's an absolute tragedy that all that shit happened. Like, but these white supremacists need to realise you would not have a country to shout about. You wouldn't have that stage.
It's a very ignorant way of thinking, of just thinking, well, we just got here because, you know, we're just so better at us and we didn't do anything.
It's on the backs of millions of slaves they got there, you know. And I also feel like these guys are almost try to start a race war. You want to start a race war in America, you're going to be massively outnumbered. Massively outnumbered. Because you're not only going to have... Not only is there white people as a non-majority in America now, you have all these people who are against this far-right movement who are white. You know? They are the minority with white people.
That is like a message that, like, these groups try and get across. Like, they're under siege, like... You know, it's not cool to be us anymore. They want to get rid of us.
What did he say to Louis Theroux? Are you proud to be white? Or I can't remember. What did he get irate about?
It was what was the guy's name? It was some in Alaska.
Yeah, because it was when they were out at night times in the street, wasn't it?
So there was a guy called I remembered his name earlier, but it was one of the kind of side protagonists. It's fair to say. So it wasn't Nick Fuentes. It was I can't remember the guy's name, but it was some kind of stage name, some in Alaska, and he was a streamer, right, which kind of goes back to this whole new modern day tactic influencing young people. Of they would be going around on these hoverboards with like a selfie stick and a mobile phone that would be streaming on, and these kids would pay to say like really, really horrendous, dark shit. Like the one that kind of sits in my mind is where Louis like saying that, you know, this is quite, you know, it's very provocative, it's, you know, it's very dark, it's very poisonous. And then one of the kids responds by paying, because some of these donations are big, like they're like $20,
huge.
$30
Yeah.
at a time. One of the kids puts back, it's not really a left or right wing thing, Louis, it's more of a human subhuman thing, which is when someone's thinking along those type of lines, like they're conscious, their kind of humanity thinking has been compromised, you know.
That is a Nazism belief.
Yeah.
You know, I've read Mein Kampf. That is a Nazist belief.
Yeah.
If you believe that someone is subhuman because of X, Y, and Z reasons, that is basically what that whole ideological white supremacist Aryan race is built on.
Yeah.
You know, and if that's the way that they're coming out at that age,
yeah,
what are these guys going to be like?
I mean, that's
30?
the tactic that the actual not the whole streaming thing, because obviously it was different times, but get this army and build it from a young age and make it this whole belief. Like, I don't know if you ever seen like the videos they showed and stuff like modern studies in school where they had the cartoons and that, and it had all the like the Hitler Youth and they used it like a bunny rabbit as an example, and they wanted the kids to hate the bunny rabbit and they could never feel any bad from it. You know, like a bunny rabbit's something that people would have a lot of kind of sympathy for, empathy for, unless you're like Kurt Zuma or something. But you know, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean?
did not see that one coming.
Yeah, you know, I have my moments, but like, you know, like these small animals are like, people would be fucking mortified, as we've seen with the Kurt Zuma thing of people abusing them or whatever. But they wanted it to be that cold within that ranks, and then they took the example of the bunny and they put that on to the people that they wanted them, you know, to then end up the Holocaust and that, and the Jewish population and that, and that's what they succeeded in doing, because most of the people that were part of all of the people who were part of the Nazi Party had no.
Well, that's why they reckon that the Holocaust within the Nazi Party was so secretive.
Yeah,
because they reckon that 40 million Germans would not have been on board with that, and no matter how much of a political influence or military influence you have over a country, if your vast majority of your country does not agree with what you're doing,
it's going to turn on you.
It's going to turn on you, you know. And that's one thing that Hitler did not need was a power struggle from within. So that's why it's so secretive, you know. But that's an issue these days with Nazism. It's not secretive, you know. I feel like for 60, 70 years after the war, you just didn't speak about it. It was like skinheads in America, in Germany, were like, yeah, they were rampant, but they weren't like making themselves known on streets and things like that. You know, you had a skinhead movement in America.
Well, that's what they called the secret police in Germany, really, wasn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
The Gestapo or whatever it was called.
Yeah, you had all these skinhead movements in the UK in the 80s, 70s, 80s and 90s, but they were not out on pillboxes shouting,
yeah, I
must kill all these kind of people, you must hate. It was secretive. The internet breaks that barrier completely. Like, you can put anything on. Keyboard warriors.
There's not a face to the name, right?
How many guys that spouting this shit on the internet actually believe it?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people are just, well, they say internet trolls, right? And then we talk about the desensitization from reality to the virtual world. Like, you see people do some really horrible shit on the internet.
Yeah.
In terms of stuff they say to people online, stuff they say, like, you know, one of the biggest things was, I don't want to branch off too far into this, but like one of the kind of biggest ones that I remember was when Harvey Price was being like targeted on the internet. And like, this is someone that you know, whatever you think about Katie Price is irrelevant in this situation. Can't defend themselves.
Nope.
You know, doesn't realize this is happening, and it's a very weak thing to fucking do in general. Just my personal opinion on it, in terms of attacking and making all this kind of.
I always put the shoe on the other foot with that one. I felt like she pushed that situation. Popularity, they always say press, no matter what it is good press. You know, if your name's getting spoken about, people are paying.
I mean, at the end of the day, I don't necessarily say that she wasn't at any fault for this whatsoever, in the sense of she was then taking him on morning TV, and I'm not trying to say that she meant to do this, but it wasn't helping to the fact that these people which is completely wrong. They shouldn't have been doing it in the sense, but you do have to understand there is going to be evil cunts out there. You know what I mean? We're taking more content, I suppose, if you will, or more clips and making more of it. Do you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, the victim and all of it had no idea it was going on, and it was completely unfair.
Probably still has no idea.
Yeah.
It's a scary thing, isn't it? It's like something so small can turn into something so massive without.
That's the incredibly weakest part of the internet. They will target people that will not know that they're doing it or have no way of being able to suffer repercussions for doing it. For like, they're not going to send all that shit to Aiden Stephen. You know what I mean? Because that's a bad motherfucker right there. That's coming round your house and choking you the fuck out. Do you know what I mean? Though,
exactly.
Only mention that because this will actually be out. No, this will be out after we actually speak to Aiden. So, nice. He will have been on here at this point. But you know what I mean? I'm just giving an example. They won't say to an MMA fighter or someone that you could suffer real consequences from, right? Or someone that doesn't give a fuck and, turns up your house or calls you out or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And this is kind of what I think is associated with this. Like, these kids think they can just say this stuff. It doesn't matter. Like, it does matter, because even if it's people that don't mean it, that's going to influence more people to get into this way of thinking, blah, 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 blah. It's all contributing to this really dangerous cauldron of a mixture of far-right ideologies that is like, I mean, we're in a very, very scary moment with this stuff, I feel like, in terms of like when Nick Fuentes is giving those speeches at those conferences, it's almost like watching a bloody episode of Black Mirror. It almost feels fabricated in a way.
You could liken that to Hitler standing in the stadium beating on the pillbox and stuff. Because
it's not exactly without caring that, but you can see like the absolute success drivenness in his face and that, and like he's hearing these people chant and he's taking it all in, and it's scary. It's really fucking scary. I'm not gonna lie, in the sense of it just feels like this thing is going to continue to grow. I don't know how you can't. I know calling every single person that gets radicalised by that a piece of shit is not the way forward, because that has happened in the past, and it aids that whole our cause is under siege, come join us mentality more. And like we said before, a lot of these people that are getting into these groups have got these underlying issues of they've got anger at something, they've got this kind of rejection, they can't deal with something, they can't deal with rejection, they don't have friends, they're incels. You've got to get to those people before this kind of manipulation gets to these people to not, do you know what I mean? Like, obviously I'm not saying abolish any kind of blame to the people that are getting into this, because you still have everyone makes a choice at the end of the day, right? But you do have to think these factors come into play, with social kind of reclusion and all that comes unhealthy thinking and behavioural patterns, and I think we've seen that time and time again. If you look at people that have caused mass shootings, like we're talking about the guy in Plymouth last year, it's probably the same in America, and that it desensitizes these people to other humans, and
it's America's scary as well, because like when a mass shooting happens in the UK, you hear all about it, but probably happens every day in America.
It's ridiculous, the numbers over there, and it's like these people are using like these military grade assault weapons that are designed to kill human beings.
And it's quite easy to get one of these. It's not like I don't know how to get a gun in the UK.
You have to have a license over here, don't you? But it's not like you don't get a license for like a Kalashnikov or something like that. It's a hunting weapon, in it, like pheasant shooting and all that kind of shit.
But these guys are like a couple of security checks. Have you ever watched Michael Moore documentary? It's not it's Fahrenheit 9/11, the first one he done, not the Trump one. It's about Twin Towers.
Yeah, is this where he talks about it kind of being aiding the whole military-industrial complex, war on terror type angle? Yeah.
So the guy in the National Rifle Association is up like 2 weeks after 9/11, beating on his pillbox and like, we need to keep our right to our guns and all that, because that's one of the things that we're speaking about. But he also went further on into the film, and he took out an insurance policy for somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
The insurance policy gave away a free gun with the insurance policy for everyone that signed up for this insurance policy.
So there was no check. There was no kind of. You just
It-
got a gun
Sorry,
with
it was a quick check,
Mhm.
but it was not like they're spending hours looking through computers and
No.
what's this guy done. Guy got his rifle, you know. It wasn't Michael Moore, but he was like filming a guy.
Well, not even just citizens, but if you look at the lack of background checks that goes into American police officers, which are getting a gun as part of their job, like the guy that Derek Chauvin, that was the. I know there was multiple ones that were charged in that, but the main.
I followed that quite closely. His prosecution and things like that.
He had many like kind of complaints and that about this type of behavior before. Do you know what I mean? And nothing was ever done about it. And you've got to think that, especially, I mean, it should be for every police force, but especially when you're handling firearms, like it doesn't have to be that people come in with these premeditated prejudices, but you've got to think when you're in America and there is this gun violence and that people can change. Like we've seen when people go to war and then they come back and they're a totally different person. You would think that these checks have to be kind of regulatory to make sure that
absolutely
that nothing, comes up. But
yeah, and even you've got guys going into the military in America. Like I tried out for the army when I was 18. Didn't get into the army. I'd been to doctor, young age, maybe like 15, 16, for mental health issues.
Yeah.
Just wasn't standard teenager stuff. You know yourself.
But that's a no-go as soon as they hear anything like that.
That was my red flag for the army.
Yeah.
No, you ain't going near a weapon, man.
Yeah.
You got any mental health issue, doesn't matter how well your life is and how it's like, no, I love to see what they do in America for,
Yeah.
The thing is, you can also, I think, essentially blame private healthcare in America. Young...
Because it's crazy how that Obamacare thing got absolutely slapped down. He tried to make a... And it's why
I don't
guys...
want to associate or rationalize a group, but if you ain't got the access, if you're poor, I'm going to use this term very loosely, poor American white trash.
Right, okay.
Trailer park trash.
Kind
of people. If you've not got access to healthcare that you have to pay for over there, you can't go and see a doctor like we can.
Here.
Maybe it takes us a wee while to go and see a doctor, but it doesn't cost us any money.
No.
It costs us through taxes, but it doesn't cost...
No, there's not an upfront fee.
Absolutely not. We can go and speak about mental health issues. We can go and speak about this thing, that thing that's affected us. You'll get given antidepressants. You'll get sent to counselling.
Yeah.
Psychologists, whatever it takes for you to get yourself better. If you can't afford that in America, you're not getting access to any of that. Which, from a young age, if you're generations of poverty in your family, you're never going to have access to that. Which then, if you've got mental health problems from a young age, you start to get your hands on guns at a young age, what's going to happen? What's going to happen?
Yeah.
These kind of issues. And I'm not saying it's all associated with white trash or one ethnic group of any sort, because it happens all over America.
Yeah.
I think that's an American...
It's more of a class thing, right?
It's a class problem, yeah. But you also have people like, what's her name? Is it the Pretty Boys, you said?
Oh, Proud Boys.
Proud Boys, sorry. That's all middle-class Americans.
Yeah.
With money, access to all this stuff, but they're still choosing to live their life this way.
Yeah.
That's people who give them an extra bloodline or two, or give them an extra few million in pocket. That's upper class.
Yeah.
That's people in power, which we're now seeing with this guy in the documentary.
Yeah.
He's not lower class. He's a middle class American. He was booted out quite a few colleges and universities. He's been booted off just about every social media platform, but he still managed to get his face, his word out there.
Financially, he's doing quite well for himself.
Yeah, ridiculously well for what he's promoting.
And it's the irony of it in the sense of he's trying to reach out and bring in people that are probably in this poverty to influence them to become part of the group, in the sense of this whole, this is why your life's shit. Do you know what I mean? This is what he's trying to say to these people. Come join us and we'll take it back for you all, where his life hasn't been affected at all in the sense of what he's trying to promote. And it's almost like there's always seems to be a This happens in many countries in the sense of the state kind of pulls the wool over your eyes of, well, it's actually because people are different from you rather than the whole class system, right? They want the same class to fight against each other to take away from the actual problem, which is the fucking...
I don't understand that argument. I'm different to you, man.
Yeah.
You're different to the guy next door. Everyone's fucking different.
Yeah.
Like, if a skin color or a race is going to affect that, then fucking it should be everyone against everyone if that's the case. Like, if you're going to attack people for being different, like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And then we don't see, like, you know, if you know, you know, but there's certain people around here that don't declare sums of money and stuff like that. But I think we've kind of mentioned
big sum of money.
Yeah, you know, like I said, he should wear one of those bags to, like, you know, those new bags, the one that go around like the chest. You just keep little notes on them. Like if I had a pound coin for every time I forgot about £28,000, I'd probably have nothing. But
mind you, if you've got 4 jobs.
And apparently it had nothing to do with any of those 4 jobs. It was a completely unrelated money, apparently. Anyway, all the best, Douglas. But so just to go back to what we were on, I think there's an important point that needs to be brought up. And there was a woman that was part of America First quite deeply for a part of time, and then she had left because they'd basically kicked her out. And Louis goes to see her, and she, you know, she's a conservative viewing person.
She still very much has that views, doesn't she?
You know, she was at the Charlottesville thing, and she was like, well, I didn't think they were saying it seriously. And it's like, if people have got torches and are marching through streets, I don't think it's a troll at that point, you know what I mean? Like, they're not saying it ironically. No one's went in the dead of night.
I felt almost when they were interviewing her that like someone had spoken to her beforehand.
Yeah, she felt very conditioned in the way that she came back across. But she did say that it didn't matter that she was, because she didn't matter that she wasn't a, you know, I don't mean to offend anyone by this, but a modern day woman in the sense of, you know, working and that she wanted a husband and stay at home, look after the kids, very old kind of fashion ingrained beliefs. But that didn't matter to them. She was still a woman. She was still below them. They could still treat her like a piece of shit. She was not an equal, not part of the group. And this is amplified when Louis asks to see this video that was sent to her from the guy that, funnily enough, was like, oh, you're attacking me and journalism's all fake and all this bullshit he's coming out with and I'm a troll, and he's losing his shit because someone's calling him out on some fucking proper, you know, bullshit, really. And I think the only way that this video can be described is psychotic. It's very, very dark. You know, there's some very, very serious threats made in that video that then goes into psychotic laughing, you know, like there's finding something funny. And then it reminded me of, you know, Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. Where
it wasn't like a good laugh.
No.
It was like
sinister.
Yeah, plotting something almost like yeah, we're laughing at this and we think it's hilarious, but this is going to happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like that's wild.
And that is the reality of all this. This is what people in these groups, this is deep down, whether the PR campaign or what they say in face value and all that to lure people in, deep rooted is that type of shit.
Yeah.
And that's like the darkest, deepest deprived shit of the lot. Do you know what I mean?
And nobody seems to be fighting against them.
No.
You know, you've got black rights groups that stand up against them, but are basically called every slur under the sun.
Yeah, it's very media driven as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And the media will only cover what the media wants to show themselves in a good light from.
And I think if we've seen anything over the last couple of years is that, you know, I think I don't know what it's funny when we when we talk about countries like Russia on the news and we call it state-sponsored media, and it's like, well, we've got state-sponsored media here. We've got state-sponsored media in America, like CNN, primarily Democratic, Fox News, Republican, BBC, not any kind of word that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom...
BBC are like their only political party. Like, we'll do what we want.
This unmade bed with a head injury must stay.
Today we vote Lib Dem.
Yeah. Yeah, but like, when you see that, I do get what you mean. Like, the irony of it is they try and say that the media is against them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I suppose like parts of the media are going to be against them, but let's not make like it's not like
It's almost
CNN.
like reverse psychology with that when they're trying to say that the media is against them.
Yeah.
They want people to see that the media is against them when in fact it's really not.
Yeah,
It's
and
really
like,
not.
and what is mainstream media at the end of the day, right? Because I see people on fucking.
Not what it was 20 years ago.
No, like people like mainstream media is bad. They won't have me on, and these are people that are sitting on fucking GB News. It's got a Sky channel. It's got like, where the fuck do you think you are? Do you know what I mean? You're on mainstream media right now.
It's what's the one in Britain? Is it LBC or something like that?
Yeah.
There's like a very conservative viewed one in Britain. It's pretty fucking wild. Like,
is that the guy with the white hair?
Yeah,
Nick Ferrari.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Can we just touch on maybe Tommy Robinson for a bit then? 'Cause,
Yeah.
like, this guy is your American Tommy Robinson. In fact, he's more extreme than Tommy because Tommy can only go as far as the stage that will put him on, and Britain tries to shut him out of the limelight.
Well, he's been to prison, right?
Yeah, they want rid of him. Whereas, because of the political way and the political system of America, got someone like your American Tommy Robinson who's getting pushed, like, and it's like, let's get this guy.
Did you ever see the original documentaries on Tommy Robinson, like way back in the day, like 2009? This was when he was still part of the.
I remember watching the one he got cracked in. There was a documentary I watched, and oh my god, this guy fucking leveled him. Like,
he's in a lot of fights. I seen one where he was at the horse racing, and he's in a bit of a street fight. I mean, it's Tommy Robinson's his witness protection name. Like, that's not his original name.
Yeah, absolutely. Steven something.
Steve Lennon, I believe it was. Which is named in the early documentaries, so we've not broken any laws by saying that. But and like, he's not in fucking witness protection, quite obviously. He's on fucking morning TV and shit. But there's a, because that's the kind of same thing, and it's the whole PR thing again of he comes across in the sense of, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm just trying to like make points in my own community and that. Then you see him steaming with someone, of an Asian background, and he's very derogatory towards them, and then that's when the real shit comes out. Do you know what I mean? It's like, aha.
Do you think a lot of these political views and ideas are thought up over a pint?
Probably. I mean, I'm gonna be fucking quite honest. That's where I hear stuff like casual racism the most, and that is in pubs. And
I would say, like, I'm not going to name any places in particular because obviously I'm just going to end up making myself liable for things. But like workplace environments, like male-dominated workplace environments, building sites, things like that. That's where you'll hear
getting the Sun newspaper out.
Yeah, things like that. Like, go to somewhere like, and let me just get the second point in after I get this first point in. Go to somewhere like, train at SPG, you would never see anything like that.
No prejudice or whatsoever.
No prejudice, like, everyone's open and willing. But look at like a building site, it's a white, male-dominated environment, and you've normally got a lot of guys that are over 50, over 60, who still have the same views as they had 40 years ago. The world's changed so much politically in the last 30 years since the Berlin Wall came down. And
I think you see that, like, for example, the Brexit referendum, right? It was primarily the young generation that voted to remain, primarily the older generation that voted to leave. I'm not saying that was all, because I'm sure there was...
there's both on both sides.
But the majority,
It's
same with the Scottish independence referendum, right? A lot of the younger generation voted to get independence. A lot of the older generation voted to remain because that's what they're used to, right? And so I think we're in an. I mean, this has kind of started off as the whole Louis documentary thing, and we've kind of just went into political leanings as a whole. But it's good.
This guy Nick went as though he's a dangerous guy.
Yeah,
dangerous.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah,
like I can with the other guys that are in the film. I think deep down they know what they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
They just don't want to admit it to themselves. They need a place to...
How do you feel as someone, like, I'm slightly older than yourself, how do you feel someone that your age is doing that? I think that's the thing that blows me away the most.
Well, I remember seeing a quote. It was an image, right? And this was many years ago, and I think this just applies to how things trickle down. you can kill a person, but you can never kill an idea.
Yeah.
And that's what this is, right? It's an ideology.
Yeah.
And it's been around for what, nearly over 100 years now, because you would have to say I mean, obviously there's probably been variations of it before, but the kind of main one that it's associated with is 1930s, 1940s Nazi Germany, right?
Yeah.
And that is what, nearly 100 years ago now, and it is still alive and kicking today.
More so than ever.
Yeah.
Since the fall of it, I'd say this is the highest it's ever been and the most out in the open it's ever been.
Yeah.
That was kind of what I was touching back to, like, you know, after the war, they didn't mention Nazis. They didn't, like, even in this country, you just didn't mention the war.
No.
Things like that.
It was just, it's over. Let's move on.
It's, I can't remember. There's a word for it, but there's a thing on internet. Wikipedia would tell me straight away that every internet conversation always reverts back to Hitler. I can't remember. There's an actual word for this, and it's true. Like, no matter how much of an argument someone gets to, the Nazis or Hitler or something always comes into it.
Do you think because when the Second World War ended, we took a lot of the kind of German infrastructure that was beneficial to them for like stuff like the space program and other things, scientists and that?
We spoke about the Holocaust at work a couple of weeks ago. We were just kind of chatting. We were working, and it says, like, Holocaust was absolutely horrific.
Yeah,
thing.
it's
the worst thing that's ever happened.
Worst atrocity in modern human history, right?
100%. Eugenics, like, was personally to me the worst part of it. You had mass killings of people, but eugenics, where you were literally taking people alive and experimenting on them, on these people.
That's where the Nuremberg Code came from, right? Because they were testing vaccinations that had not been approved by the American. Yeah, just to see what would happen. Yeah,
they were the most fucked up one for me is they would take a set of twins and they'd maybe inject one of the twins with, like, polio, and they'd wait for that twin to die. Then as soon as that twin died, they'd go and grab the other healthy one, kill them, and 2 live autopsies. Like, there's no other place in history you could ever do that. Yeah. That's the way you're going on about, like, the German infrastructure going forward. We took a lot of them things that we learned from the war and the Nazis and still use them in modern day now.
And do you think that could be something that maybe is like applied to the internet and that?
Yeah.
Because you've got to think, if it's built by the people that were
part
part
of to life in general.
Yeah. You know, we're quite aware as well that we're one of the most surveillanced countries in the world now as well. That is something that happened in Germany in the 30s and the 40s. And a lot of the kind of stuff of the false flags that they did and that, it's fair to say that we might have done over periods of time. So I do think that is dangerous because
you only find out about false flags 50 years after they happen.
Yeah.
If false flags are happening in the British government just now, it'll be past our lifetimes before you hear about them.
Yeah.
But they learnt a lot from the Nazis. Every government has, because let's put aside Holocaust, let's put aside how wrong their views were. They knew how to run a country. There was no homeless people in Germany until they started making Jewish people homeless and things like that.
Well, that was the thing, right? We'd put Germany in so much poverty from the First World War. Like, we'd made them pay all the reparations, limited their military, anything. Like, the biggest poverty of all time, which was the perfect environment for some crazy shithouse dictator like Hitler to come in, get their economy back up and running, get them 100% employment and that, and then they just fucking followed them wherever they would fucking go, you know? That's how, I guess, we've kind of facilitated extremism in the past. But in the sense of, you know, nowadays, you know, from back then, I think a lot of the same methods still exist. And I think it's quite interesting to see how something's only dangerous to one person's government when it's in another government's hands.
Yeah.
In the sense of, we were thinking, well, all that stuff that they were doing is horrid, but then we took from that and started using it going forward. Obviously not in the same line that they were doing, but we still used it when...
Look at how massive the UK expanded after... the UK, I'm going to use Great Britain. loosely term there, expanded in colonization after the war.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much doing what the Germans were doing.
Yeah, and we had a plan, didn't we? Was it not Churchill that had the plan to retrain the German Wehrmacht to fight with us to invade Russia or something afterward? And he was wanting to put all these atom bombs in. There's I'm gonna have to look that up. There's an operation named after it, but I'll send you after. But apparently, not saying it was confirmed or anything, that because we'd won the race in the whole atom bomb thing, because Germany was trying to make one as well, which would have ended the war in their favor, obviously, if they'd came into it first. The idea was to retrain all the prisoners of war from the German side to then fight for the Allied Expeditionary Force to take out the future threat of communism and Russia. And obviously, World War II, even though we were allies with the Russians, quite quickly turned into adversaries that is now still sprouting up in today's society.
It still is. And then I feel like if, God forbid, if World War III was to kick off between America and Russia, with such the political divide and the hatred that's going on within America, the Russians would be laughing, mate.
Yeah, because there'd be civil wars.
Yeah, and you can believe what you want about Russia and Trump. Russia's bound to be rubbing their hands with all this America first stuff, like creating political divide in amongst a country that was already unstable.
Yeah.
Whereas you look at, I don't know too much about Russia's political system, but there ain't much divide there. You've got the Chechens, which is a different story altogether. But if you don't get on board with Putin's idea, then look at Ukraine. They simply want to join NATO.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
That's not happening apparently.
No.
But I think there's a part of him as well that if he likes to be provocative, Putin, doesn't he? He likes to. I think he likes the idea of us thinking he's going to invade, but he might not do it. But he likes that having people on strings kind of idea. I think we might have touched on this before, but did I ever tell you about the time that it was right after the Novichok thing? Theresa May was like, we're not going to be intimidated, and then he put the whole Russian fleet past the cliffs of Dover, basically backhanding her in the face. Because he's a troll, right? He's a massive troll at the same time. But yeah, well, we have been going for like an hour 20 minutes now. We'll summarize what we've been talking about. We've went from here to there and everywhere, but it's what podcasting's all about.
Exactly, and it's touching massively on the race issue.
Yeah.
Because that's essentially what the programme was about. He's got other political beliefs, but I feel like his main divide is a white versus... It's not even white versus black, it's white versus everyone. Anything not white. They didn't really touch on it in the programme too much, but I think a lot of it's religious belief as well. It's white Protestantism.
Yeah.
I can't really speak too much about Protestant and Catholicism myself, but that's very deep rooted within the presidency himself. You look how white Protestant George Bush was. The areas he's from, this is the kind of areas that these followers got. He's going to get followers from all over America.
Yeah. But
it's places like Texas, places like Alabama, where you're going to get bigger groups and followings of these people.
Do you think, we've had a joke about Joe Biden on here, not because of this, just because, Joe Biden gaff machine.
Yeah.
There's a good one as well where he's like trying to say his phone number, like 30 330 30, and it's like someone then remixed it and made it like the old McDonald's songs, like 330 330. Anyway, but he's a Roman Catholic, right? Yeah. He's like the first. Is he not the first Roman Catholic to be United States president? Yeah. Do you think that's why he gets such a hard time from the Republican side of things? Obviously, there's probably other things there as well.
I think so. It's got to be some way associated with it. It can't. America's huge on religion, massive. That's kind of going back to further Louis documentaries. Did you ever watch Most Hated Family in America?
Oh, was that was the
God's Hates Fags?
Yeah,
people.
the fucking Westboro Baptist Church.
Yes,
there we go. Yeah.
So we done it for a laugh a few years ago. If you get in touch with the Westboro Baptist Church, They will send you out window stickers for your car.
Oh, did you see the follow-up one? And there's a guy from Leeds there now, and he's like, "God hates the UK." You know what I mean? I was like, "This is nuts." I was like, "This is fucking crazy." Imagine him at like an independence rally. God hates UK. At the Scottish Parliament today, the Westboro Baptist Church.
Straight after the silent Klansman.
Yeah, Jesus. Oh man. Fucking hell.
But no, we actually like trolled these guys because we thought, right, you know, what can we do to like just. So I thought, right, well, just cost them money, you know. Let's just cost them money because they're a small community.
Yeah,
like, they're not massive and political or nothing like that. So we're like, could you send us some window stickers and all that? We're in the UK. We support your beliefs and all that. And fuck yeah, they sent window stickers like. But it would have cost them like $10 to send that to the UK. So you know. It's things like this, but that's another one that's they're religious, but so religious and so set and believe in their own ways.
It's almost religious extremism, right?
Yeah,
that's basically what it is, actually. Yeah.
But they don't, thankfully, seem to have so much of a social media presence.
Yeah,
they're a bit more old school.
I think it's quite fair to say it's a cult, really, isn't it?
It is. They go about outside like gay weddings and shit with
and soldiers' funerals and
soldiers.
Stuff. Like the most provocative.
That was the wild one for me. Like, you had some because Louis panned and he was at the funeral and he like panned in to where the funeral was happening, and you seen like the coffin and that getting like people gathering around. And then the camera panned round, and then you had these guys on the fucking street, like, God hates fags.
Yeah.
Fucking 500 yards apart. So it just shows that, like, they're that obsessed with their views that there's not even a respect factor there. Like, they're not going to give you the time of day to just try and get your point of view across to them.
So they're there to shout provocative shit. And
yeah. And
I mean, it's mental illness as well, isn't it? It's like, you can't be fucking consciously thinking, you know, we're doing the world a favor by doing this, because it's just fucking poison, really, isn't it? No one gets any benefit from doing that. No one, I would highly doubt that they get any kind of good feeling from doing that themselves. You know, these people are getting beaten up for doing this. They're getting shit thrown at them. You know, that's what happens when you say this kind of provocative shit in front of people that have, you know, maybe lost a loved one. Or
the UK is going the exact opposite way as well. Like, you can't fucking protest.
No, the policing bill, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it's. Do you think, like, do you know how we talk about like people getting cancelled in like the media and like everyday life and whatever? Do you know that happens to political figures?
See, you're back, Neil Young.
Yeah, they always come back. But like, do you think that happens to like political figures as well? Because like it always seems to be like Biden, whatever you think about him, seems like he's there because he will listen to what the Democrat Party want in like the higher up kind of thing. And the reason that everyone in the Republican Party didn't like Trump was because he wasn't a Republican. He was just using the Republican platform to become president, because that's the only two that you're going to be able to win a presidency for. Whereas they all hated him as well, and he kind of became this uncontrolled.
Do you remember the Republican debates?
Yeah,
the actual.
And George Bush's brother was there. Jesus,
like, he just went on and like just started attacking them personally. He could not give a shit.
It was
about
like
their
WWE.
Careers. Yeah. Do you
remember the Clinton one where it was like she was like talking about
wrong?
Like, thank God, like we don't have someone in charge of our law enforcement services like Donald Trump, and he just bangs out because you'd be in jail. Yeah. It was like, whoa, like damn,
it's almost like your mama.
Yeah, dude's coming with the heat. You know what I mean? But like, there's people like Bernie Sanders, and there's people like I think it's Tulsi Gabbard as well, who are more. Like, you know,
I liked Bernie.
Yeah, Bernie's free healthcare, calls out big pharmaceutical, like calls out big corruption and that.
Yeah.
never get, like, I feel like if he'd ran against Trump, he would have murked Trump in those debates. I was looking forward to seeing them two go at it, to be honest.
You
from
don't
like,
think Bernie is a bit like what Corbyn could have been?
yeah, that is exactly what it is. And like, you've got Tulsi Gabbard, who was one of the other ones that literally shut Kamala Harris down like it was going out of style, and then talking about the military-industrial complex at the presidential debates, and they're like, "Oh no, we can't be having that. It's like, you're letting the secrets out." Do you know what I mean? And it's like when people talk about real shit that's happening, like a lot of the shit Jeremy Corbyn was saying back in 2019 is happening right now. Like they're going to take all this away, and that's what they're doing. Like they're going to be able to control the noise volume of your protests. You won't be able to fucking stop their cars anywhere. Your protest basically doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's like, people are like, but people get divided by these things as well, right? Like people don't understand people's against the whole vaccination passport thing, but people don't understand people being against the voter ID thing, and it's like they're the same fucking thing. Like, you know what I mean? It's more state control and segregating society and that, and it's like you should be both.
Until you change the political system entirely, it's never going to change.
Yeah, Russell Brand was right. Like, I thought he was nuts when he was talking about this shit, but yeah.
Unless you change everything and go back to the start. But then again, what system do you put in?
No, I know.
Because whatever system you put in, there's going to be problems.
Yeah, and it's going to get, like, I'm a big believer in the corruption of the human mind, right? You get more money than you've ever had, and you maybe don't have to worry about money. That changes you as a person. Whether you want to admit it or not, it's a different thing, you know? Just like if you get really good at jiu-jitsu in the other sense, or just do jiu-jitsu in general, it changes you as a person for the better, right? Do you know what I mean? Like,
if you're having to work your ass off, like, I work fucking 50 hours a week. I don't get bad wages, but I don't get good wages. You know, it's affordable living. I call it affordable living. Now, I've got a total against the man view because I'm having to work my ass off to make my anywhere in life. Someone who's in that position doesn't have that view because
they are the man.
They are the man, exactly. So it's definitely a class structure thing. But if you put someone who has nothing and you give them everything, changes them. Changes them completely.
100%. 100%.